People have been speculating about me, talking about me, and attempting to define who I am for years. They have written, spoken, and created their own narratives. However, I've remained silent because I thought it was the best course of action. But now that I'm 54, I see that quiet may sometimes be a prison. And I want to talk for myself today, telling the truth rather than trying to impress or defend myself. This is not an admission of guilt. It's not an excuse for being human. It's an honest moment that I owe to myself as well as to those who have stood by me over the years. People seldom see the man behind it all, but they frequently see the lights, the music, and the fame. Yes, I have been fortunate, but I have also been shattered. Perhaps it's time for me to acknowledge what many have long suspected, that there was a guy attempting to heal behind every song of praise. Long before the music begins, my story begins. Raised in a small world with lofty aspirations, I was a child from Fort Worth, Texas. My life wasn't simple at first. I had to learn to survive before I could smile, and I had to deal with rejection and grief at a young age. I found solace in music, where I could transform my suffering into something that sounded hopeful. I had no idea what to anticipate as my career started to take off. I was merely a young man with a dream one day, and the next I was leading thousands of people in worship. It was unusual to feel both blessed and burdened by the attention. Although it sounded lovely, I was afraid when people began referring to me as a voice for the generation, because I felt in my heart that I was still discovering who I was. The success continued to increase over time. Interviews, tours, and awards all become a part of my existence. In actuality, though, I occasionally felt more alone the more individuals I connected with. You might become both visible and invisible due to fame. Though not everyone truly knows you, everyone can see you. The narrative of Kirk Franklin is about a guy learning to be honest with himself, not about celebrity, music, or headlines. He believed that being strong meant never breaking, so he carried the burden of perfection for years. However, reality frequently serves as a reminder that even people who guide others in their faith require healing. His voice, which used to solely be full of praise, now conveys something more profound: truth. At 54, he learned that faith is not pretense and strength is not silence. He acknowledged the fact that even the most successful people might lose themselves in an attempt to live up to everyone's expectations, something that many had secretly suspected all along. His trip is powerful, though, not because of the suffering he went through, but rather because of the serenity he discovered after confronting it. Kirk didn't fall when he ultimately decided to prioritize honesty over appearance. Instead, he got more liberated. He reminded us all that being vulnerable is a sign of strength rather than weakness. His narrative demonstrates that God utilizes sincere individuals rather than flawless ones. Grace is beautiful because it just demands truth rather than perfection. This is more than just a celebrity confession to the audience. It serves as a mirror for everyone who has ever concealed their difficulties, smiled through suffering, or dreaded criticism for being authentic. We learn from Kirk's remarks that healing begins where concealment ends. Therefore, the message that you don't need to be flawless to be loved remains evident as his voice fades and the music becomes quieter. To be selected, you don't need to have everything together. I'm human and I'm still learning is sometimes the most effective thing you can do. Because freedom really starts there. The unspoken battle. For the majority of my life, I've been singing about faith, but there were times when I couldn't even sense my. I would tell the audience that God is good while standing on stage, but on the inside, I was exhausted. I'm not tired of God, but I'm tired of acting flawless for those who thought I would never falter. I concealed myself under performance for years. I covered up every error, flaw, and uncertainty with a different song, project, or tour. People didn't see the man who wondered if he still deserved to be used by God, but they did see strength. I was living inside a construct I had created, and it was getting heavier every day. I battled fear rather than celebrity. Fear of being misinterpreted. A fear of disappointing others. I was afraid that if I revealed my brokenness, people would just remember my shortcomings and forget about the music. For too long, that dread dominated me, and I lost the straightforward happiness that initially drove me to fall in love with music. The point of breaking, drama or headlines, did not accompany the breaking point. It was silent. After a concert, I was sitting by myself in a hotel. The crowd had roared, and I felt empty for the first time. I didn't recognize the man staring back at me when I looked in the mirror. I came to the terrible realization that evening that I had been giving everything to everyone and had nothing left for myself. I was silently bleeding within while using my music to help others recover. I realized that I couldn't continue in this manner. I had to confront the reality I had been avoiding for years and quit running and hiding. I bent my head and begged for serenity rather than another big psalm or award. True tranquility is the sort that is independent of praise. I made a commitment to God and to myself that evening. I would quit acting fake and begin leading an honest life. The admission, what he ultimately admits. What am I at last acknowledging? It's not what people believe. This is not a scandal or a startling secret. I'm acknowledging something much more profound. I was spiritually spent for years. I was living in weakness and preaching strength. I was breaking in private while grinning in public. People were constantly suspicious that something was wrong, and they were correct, but not in the way they believed. My battle was with myself, not with sin. I had lost the equilibrium between my calling and my tranquility, between ministry and manhood. I constructed barriers around my suffering because I believed that being strong meant never crying or displaying vulnerability. But honesty, not silence, is what makes one strong. I thereby acknowledge my humanity today. I acknowledge that I have hesitated, stumbled, and experienced fear. And I acknowledge that God never abandoned me. He was waiting for me to become authentic and stop acting. The healing turning point, I started to recover when I eventually took a temporary break from everything. I spent more time with God, my family, and myself. I attended counseling. I discussed topics I had kept hidden for years. And gradually, the cacophony in my mind started to subside. During that season, I discovered something wonderful. God blesses our true selves, not the people we pretend to be. I found freedom once more when I stopped striving to be the ideal gospel singer and just began being Kirk, a guy, a parent, and a Christian. Instead of feeling under pressure, I composed new music from a position of calm. I chuckled more. I was more deeply in love. I started to see that all I had to do was live out my religion. I didn't have to prove it. And the more truthful I became, the more people sought solace in my narrative. The response and salvation. I anticipated criticism when I eventually told the truth in public. However, I was given grace. Thank you for being real, people said. I was informed by other artists that they were also sick of acting. Fans related their personal tales of fatigue, remorse, and self-discovery. It helped me realize that we are more connected when we are honest than when we are flawless. My testimony was strengthened rather than weakened by my confession. Instead of ceasing to listen to my music, they began to do so in a different way. They could hear the heart behind the rhythm as well. That helped me realize that redemption is something we embrace rather than something we achieve. When we are broken, God does not cancel us. He reconstructs us. Thoughts and a message for the audience. Looking back, I can see that my biggest struggle was not with problems or criticism, but rather with the person I saw in the mirror. And after I reconciled with him, everything else began to come together. I want everyone listening to realize that you don't have to hide behind perfection. To get accepted, you don't need to wear a mask. Admitting when you're weak and still holding on to the hope that better times are coming is what faith is all about, not trying to be strong. Face your truth without fear. The world needs real hearts, real voices, and real individuals who are eager to change, not another perfect picture. I eventually realized at the age of 54 that confession is a sign of freedom rather than failure. I've been singing about grace my entire life, but now I really get it. Grace is about getting back up, picking yourself up, and saying, I'm still here, not about never falling. I don't have to be flawless, and I'm not. I'm just a dude who loves music, God, and people enough to be honest. To everyone who has ever wondered, questioned, or suspected, yes, I was having trouble. I was indeed lost. But honesty, rather than celebrity or praise, was how I found my way back. Perhaps it was God's original intention.